What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We're going to preview the 2024 schedule for Penn State and give you an early projected record for this team. Keep in mind, this is not an official prediction or anything. We're just giving you a projection based off of the schedule, how tough the schedule is, and the formula that we use. Before we get to that 2024 schedule, let's look back at 2023. Here was the schedule from last season, and of course, this team went 10-2 in the regular season, 10-3 after the loss in the bowl game. And, you know, it was kind of a predictable season with Ohio State, Michigan, the tough games, and they needed to find a way to win one of those if they were going to maybe take that next step and maybe get to the college football playoff. They played West Virginia in the non-conference last season, and then they played Delaware and UMass, so not too tough of a non-conference schedule, although West Virginia wound up being pretty good last year, better than a lot of people expected. And then, again, Ohio State, Michigan, really the only teams on their level in the Big Ten. So let's look at this schedule for 2024. And before we go game by game, let's break it down. First, we'll look at the non-conference. They'll play West Virginia again this year, this time on the road. Could be a tricky game. West Virginia, not an easy place to play. Bowling Green and Kent State in there at home. And then we'll just look at the entire home schedule here. Those two games, also Illinois, UCLA, Ohio State, Washington, and Maryland. That means 5 home games and 4 road games for Penn State. And you look at those home games, Ohio State's going to be tough, obviously, but Illinois, UCLA, Washington, Maryland, all very winnable games for Penn State at home. So a pretty nice home schedule there. You look at the road schedule, again, West Virginia, and then they also got USC, Wisconsin, Purdue, and Minnesota. I'm not super high on USC, and that's not exactly one of the toughest places to play. Wisconsin probably going to be their toughest road game, if not West Virginia. So this is a pretty favorable schedule. No games where you'd say Penn State cannot win. Again, you get Ohio State at home, and they're going to be favored more than likely in all these road games. So this, again, is a very favorable schedule. They'll open up with West Virginia week 1 on the road. Then they play Bowling Green the next week. And then, so their bye weeks are kind of weird. They have a bye week between Bowling Green and Kent State. I mean, could you have a bye week at a worse spot, week 3, between Bowling Green and Kent State? That's rough right there. But they get Kent State coming off of a bye. Then they'll play Illinois on September 28th. Then it's UCLA at home on October the 5th. And then it'll be that road game at USC October 12th. And then they get their other bye weeks. So their bye weeks come before really the halfway point, the first half of the season. They have 6 games after their second bye week. So it's almost like those first 6 games are just kind of figuring things out, and games again where they could win. And then you get into that stretch of Wisconsin on the road, and then it's Ohio State on November the 2nd. Then after that, Washington on the 9th. Follow that up with Purdue on the road and Minnesota on the road. So they get back-to-back road games there. And it's really interesting the way, they've got West Virginia week 1, and then they have a bye week between USC and Wisconsin both on the road, and then Purdue and Minnesota both on the road. So it's just kind of weird how it's just a strange schedule. But yeah, Purdue, Minnesota on the road, and then Maryland to close things out on November 30th. So the order of the games, the bye weeks and all that, not great. But as far as the opponents, this is a very, very favorable schedule, and I think it gives Penn State a chance to maybe even get to the Big Ten championship. Again, you're looking looking for tough stretches. Wisconsin on the road, Ohio State, Washington, that's a tough stretch. And you could really just go with those final 6 games because they get no breaks. Purdue and Minnesota, games where Penn State should be favored, but they're on the road, and you never know on the road. Maryland, it's kind of tough to figure out how good that team's going to be. So really, the first half of their schedule, very manageable in my opinion. USC on the road, West Virginia on the road, could be a little bit tricky, but after you get past that second bye week, that's when the more difficult stretch of the season will start. And again, those final 6 games are going to be pretty tough. But overall, again, Penn State has a very favorable schedule compared to some of the other teams in the Big Ten. Again, it's going to give them a chance. This schedule is going to give Penn State a chance to maybe get to that Big Ten championship. Penn State was maybe the easiest team to predict in 2023. I mean, we knew they were clearly better than every team in the Big Ten, not named Michigan and Ohio State. And I think most of us just didn't believe they could win those 2 games. So that put them at 10-2. That was their record. That was our projection. That was my prediction. That was Athlon's prediction. and the over-under was at 9.5, so that was right there at 10-2 as well. So very easy to project Penn State season last year, and this year might be more of the same. Let's get into it. And again, this is the schedule, and this is the scale that we'll use. So if it's under 20 or over 80, those are games where I think the spread will be 17 plus points, games where you can pretty much guarantee a team to win, the favorite team to win. And then you've got 20 to 29, 71 to 80. Those are games where I think the spread will be double digits, 10 to 16, maybe in that range, 30 to 39, 61 to 70. Games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. And then the 40 to 60% range, those are really your 50-50 games that could go either way, games where I think the spread will be less than 6. And it's not really about the spreads, though. We have a tier system that we use, a formula that we use to get this projection, but that's just one way of looking at it. Way I like to describe it. So for Penn State, we start with the easier games: Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, and Purdue. And Purdue could be better, but looking at it right now, and again, that's why this is an early projection and not an actual prediction. They seem to be kind of in the bottom tier, and so even though that game's on the road, that is going to be counted as a win. Also, Bowling Green, Kent State, and Illinois because it's at home. So 4 fairly easy wins there, and then they get UCLA, Washington, Minnesota, and Maryland. All games where I think they're going to be favored by double digits, a couple touchdowns. UCLA at Penn State, I don't see them having much of a chance. Washington loses so much. You've got Minnesota on the road, can be a tough place to play, but Penn State clearly a better team in my opinion. And then there's Maryland. It's kind of tough to figure out where to put Maryland right now, but that game is at home, so I think Penn State will be favored by about 14 points in that one as well. So if they take care of business in these 4 games, that's 8 wins for you already. And then we get into the games that could be a little bit more difficult. West Virginia, USC, and Wisconsin, all on the road. I think Penn State will be favored by about a touchdown in all these games, but they are on the road. And so if they were to slip up somewhere, it's probably going to be in one of these 3. Of course, Ohio State's going to be tough, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they did somehow lose to West Virginia or USC or Wisconsin, even though I do think Penn State's the better team. And then you've got Ohio State. That's really a 50-50 game. I think Ohio State's probably going to be favored, even though the game is at Penn State. Buckeyes just absolutely loaded this season, so it's hard to imagine them being an underdog really in any game that they play. Maybe against Oregon, I don't know. But Penn State going to be, I think, a 3 or 4 point underdog even at home. But they've got a chance. That's a game that they can win, and it's in that 50-50 range. So to get the projection, the green games are counted as 100%. The games in the blue are counted at 75%. The games in the purple at 65%. And then the Ohio State game at 50%. So you average all that out, and you get the projection for Penn State of 10-2. 10-2, same as last year. And I believe the number was actually like 9.45. So they rounded up to 10. Or if you want to take that 5 off, you could actually round it down to 9-3. So they're right there in between 9-3 and 10-2. Again, you look at West Virginia, USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State. The odds would say that they're probably going to go 2-2 in those games, and then they could slip up and lose to one of these teams in the blue, and that would get you to 9-3. But it's really hard to see this team at 9-3. I think it's probably going to be another 10-2, maybe better type year. Schedule is very favorable, and it gives them a chance to get to the Big Ten Championship very realistically, even though they might not be one of the top 2 teams. Again, I think their schedule sets up in a way that they could be there at the end of the season. If they can take care of business on the road at West Virginia, USC, and Wisconsin, they probably don't even have to beat Ohio State. You can lose that game and still get to the Big Ten Championship. So Penn State seems like a team that is, I'm not going to say guaranteed, but they are in great shape, in my opinion, to get to at least 10-2 and get to the college football playoff. Again, the projection 10-2. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Give me your thoughts and your projection on Penn State down in the comments below.